that he, in response to obtaining that money, he said, okay, I'll do you a favor. It was a favor that only somebody in his position could try and give, which is I will use the power I have as an elected official to try and move this building through for you. As you said, even though the fire department said, we're not quite there yet, this type of pro quo arrangement is the kind of quintessential thing that we look for when we think about public corruption. Now, in terms of, what are you missing? I think nothing other than that there is a big difference between facts laid out in an indictment and proving that to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And we are not there yet.
And what of penalties could he be facing if he were to be convicted?
So we're talking about, as you said, a federal case, 5 counts here, 5 different crimes, and potentially decades in federal prison. This is very serious. And arguably, it's the most serious type of crime that a public official can be accused of. Again, it's taking a position of public trust and abusing it and using it for your own personal gain. And this is the type of corrosive crime, which, if proven, it's just alleged at this point, really hurts all of us. It hurts our faith in government.
With the time we have left, I want to talk to you about the new filing in former President Trump's case. The indictment was obviously sealed, so we don't know what Jack Smith's new evidence is. But what do you think the significance of this filing is? What were you looking to learn?
So we're looking, and I think Scott McFarland did excellent reporting this. We're looking in part to see if there's anything new. But what I'm looking at is somebody who covered the Supreme Court decision that said, yes, presidents and former presidents are entitled to some immunity from criminal prosecution. What I'm really looking for is to see how Jack Smith, the special counsel in this case, is getting around that decision. Because that decision, I do think, absolutely leaves room for Jack Smith to continue with his case. Point, we don't know when and it's sealed, but he's come forward with of the nation trying to prove to Judge Chutkan there's plenty here that is just about private conduct, not official conduct, because the bottom line for that case is core presidential functions or official conduct, that's off limits, that's entitled to immunity. Private conduct, go ahead and bring a criminal case.
Such a situation. So what happens next? Is there any possibility we see a trial before Election Day or even another hearing before Election Day?
Another hearing, absolutely. A trial, I'm going to say no possibility. It's September 26th. The election, as we know, I think it's 40 days now. Given the huge filing that Judge Chutkan has just received, she's going to have to sift through all of this, see which allegations can continue, which will not continue. To likely hold a hearing on this. There's a lot for her to go through. I don't see a world in which a trial begins before November 5th.
Jessica Levinson working overtime today with 2 big legal stories on her plate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A last-minute settlement has been reached between conservative media outlet Newsmax and voting technology firm Smartmatic. Jury selection had been set to begin in that defamation trial today in a Delaware Superior Court. Smartmatic was suing Newsmax, you'll recall, for airing false claims spread by former President Donald Trump and his Republican allies, claims that the 2020 election was rigged by the company's software, which, of course, was not true. So far, details of the settlement have not been revealed, so we don't know how much Smartmatic will be getting. A major storm is gathering strength as it barrels towards Florida. We're going to have the latest on Hurricane Helene when we come back. You're streaming America Decides.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7. It didn't seem like anything could happen because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am. This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing and bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. Hurricane Helene is on a path to make landfall in Florida's Big Bend area in the coming hours. Our Manuel Bojorquez is tracking the storm in Tampa.
As you can see, conditions have really started to deteriorate this afternoon along Tampa Bay. The wind has really picked up. The water is churning behind me and splashing all around. And mind you, these are just the outer bands of Hurricane Helene as it travels north parallel to the coastline. Just to give you a sense of how wide the storm is, we're about 200 miles from the expected landfall, but because its wind field is about 345 miles wide, we're still getting these tropical storm force effects here. But the big concern for this large metropolitan area is the storm surge expected to 8 feet. So, of course, there are mandatory evacuations in some coastal areas. The time to leave those areas safely is probably closed by now. So either people are hunkering down in their homes or they've made it to higher ground and to shelters. Even after the storm passes, officials say that some of the lingering effects of the flooding up to 36 hours. And one more point about tonight, which will be a long night here, is that we have not yet seen the high tide. That is expected later. So the storm surge, the worst of it, we have not seen it yet. Nancy?
And we'll be tracking that dangerous storm surge tonight. Manuel Bojorquez, thank you so much. 2 major political figures are facing serious legal troubles. Our panel will break down the political implications for former President Trump and Mayor Eric Adams. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power, national security, foreign policy, global economics. Every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The End of Affirmative Action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions. What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024? Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded 1-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels. 100%. No doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Former President Donald Trump been criticizing Vice President Kamala Harris about her planned visit to the southern border tomorrow. He said a short time ago that she should, quote, save her airfare and stay in Washington. Sophia Kai and Jasmine Wright join us now to discuss. Sophia is a national politics reporter at Axios, and Jasmine is a politics reporter at Notice. Welcome to both of you. Great to see you. I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to get to some other breaking news, which is that former President Trump, who has been doing a news conference at Trump Tower this evening, just said President Vladimir Zelensky, after all, tomorrow morning, which is a surprise because
posted a private exchange message from about, details asking for a meeting, locations of a potential meeting. I mean, usually don't do this. It's kind of a breach of trust.
Right.
But, it looks like he turned around and decided that it was in his interest to have this meeting after having a fairly fraught relationship with Zelensky in recent weeks, even called him a great salesman. Mm-hmm. If not anything else.
Right. Yeah. And the reason that this has kind of been in the news is because Zelensky gave a pretty revealing interview to New Yorker magazine where he basically criticized the former president, said he doesn't understand what it's to win the war in Ukraine. And he said that Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, is too radical to be vice president. And so that's when Trump went from saying, I'll probably meet with him when he's here, meeting with the president, to I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that Zelensky is kind of putting his horse in a certain buggy here, right? With the vice president, with President Biden, because of the fact that he's very aware that Republicans don't necessarily want to continue to fund the Ukraine's war against Russia. They don't want to continue to put money and ammunition and all this kind of things that they've really been downtrodden on for the last few months, if not more. And so Zelensky recognizes that he would have more success in his fight against Russia with President Biden and if Vice President Harris was successful in November. And I think that's why you saw when Harris met with Zelensky earlier today after his meeting with Biden. Well, she said, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, if I can be candid right now, there are people in my country who would basically rather Ukraine just kind of throw their hands up and accept what Russia has done in the territories that they've taken and move on. But that is not what the vice president wants Ukraine to do. The vice president has actually kind of brandished her reputation on foreign policy with President Zelensky. She talks about all the time about the fact that she was presented evidence about how Russia would invade Ukraine before it happened a couple of years ago. And so this is a time for the vice president to try to show that contrast between her and Trump when it comes to foreign policy and leadership. And Zelensky kind of played into that with his comments attacking both Trump and J.D. Vance.
Right, because funding for his war effort is on the line. Sophia, another issue that divides Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is immigration. He has been railing against her this evening, as we said in that press conference. And she's going to rail right back tomorrow when she goes to the border for the first time since 2021, holding a campaign event where she's going to argue that he's the one who actually isn't tough enough when it comes to immigration.
Yeah, and this is a big area where her campaigning looked a little bit different than what President Biden was doing. She's going to the border. She's going to be talking about the bipartisan bill that she supported, that Trump tanked. And, you know, what Trump's doing here is he's trying to preempt her visit. He's, you know, of the many policy issues that his advisors want him to talk about, we know that immigration is the one that he actually enjoys talking about. So this has been his opportunity to talk about policy and get focused on something that's important in Arizona and Nevada, two key swing states that he's going to have to win, you know, in order to really have a chance.
We've seen in a few polls, Jasmine, including our own here at CBS News, that she has managed to close the gap when it comes to handling of the economy, something that Trump has long had an edge on. Right. Does her campaign think that they can close the gap on immigration as well? That's an even bigger gap for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they hope so. I think that that is kind of the reason why we're going to see her at the border tomorrow. I mean, it's interesting because on Wednesday, we saw her giving an economy speech while they recognize that they are really cutting into Trump's lead on whether or not Americans or who Americans trust more on the economy. And they're hoping that that same thing can happen on Friday. Of course, this is the message that she's going to be delivering at the border on Friday is a much different message than what she delivered in 2019. In 2019, we saw her way further on the left, more accepting of DACA recipients, more in kind of cahoots with folks who were pro-immigration. But I think one thing that people miss about the vice president is that this shift to the right isn't just something that happened overnight. It's actually been happening since 2021 when we saw her in Mexico saying, "Do not come." And so it's been a real shift to the right, responding, I think, to the pressures that this administration has faced on immigration. And they recognize that a further right message on immigration is probably the one that's going to win or help them win if they do win come November.
Jasmine, you just published a really fascinating story about how some Black operatives are upset with the way that the Harris campaign has been spending its money. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's actually an issue that comes up basically every cycle. The Democrats who say that Black voters are their base have trouble funding the Black political class, which includes consultants on things like paid media, grassroots operations, things that we know that those lucrative contracts come really every cycle, and they don't necessarily hit the Black political class. And that's something people hoped would change with the vice president at the top of the ticket, particularly because Democrats have been concerned about the backside voters when it comes to their support of Democrats. Now, the vice president has really done a lot better than we did with Black voters when he was sold the ticket, but it still is a problem. So our piece was looking at basically them becoming kind of furious with the Harris's campaign over the lack of investment that they see, not just to their own firms, really are the Democratic circle, but also to investment of paid media